Walter Rove, you're very welcome to our webinar this afternoon on optimizing food waste collection in apartments. David Rouse is my name, multi-unit developments advisor with the Housing Agency. We have a lot of people registering and logging in, and we have over 200 people registered for today's webinar. So people are just logging in, and as they're doing that, I will give you a quick run through on the timetable for our session this afternoon. We will do a little bit of introduction. We'll do an audience composition survey. So we'll be asking you anonymously to please let us know from what sector you are attending. We will do a short update on some news in the month sector. Then we will get straight into the meat of today's session, excuse the pun, with Niamh McCormick of the EPA, Percy Foster of Foster Environmental. We will have a short survey question after the main presentations. We'll deal with the questions we've received by email, and we'll wrap it up in or around 20 past 1. Housekeeping. The chat function is available to you if there's a problem with the sound or the visuals. My colleague Lisa Marie Sheehy is in the background keeping an eye on things. So if there's a problem with what you're seeing or with what you're hearing, please let us know in the chat. As I mentioned, we have received questions by email. We'll deal with those towards the end of the session. The webinar has been recorded for future use. It will be on our YouTube channel before close of business tomorrow, Friday. We will email around the slides to you all after the session and when the YouTube recording is up online. So again, that'll be probably tomorrow. A reminder that the material we're sharing today is for general information purposes. Your developments, your schemes, your involvement in apartments will be unique in each case, and you should seek advice on individual topics and individual circumstances. We would like, please, to ask you who you are and what sector you represent. So if you would kindly fill out the poll we're sharing online. This is anonymous. Please just let us know from what sector you're coming, what category best describes you. So this will help our presenters today know who they are speaking with, and will help us plan future events as well. So are you an OMC director, a licensed property management agent? Are you with a city or county council, local authority staff? Maybe you're with a housing charity, an approved housing body. Are you from the waste management sector? You might be a tenant or a renter. You might be a homeowner occupier, an investor or landlord. You might be in the broadly the construction or property professional sector. You might be from the legal or accounting sector. So you may fall into several of these categories, but please use the one that best describes your reason for attending or your background for attending today. And the more people that complete this poll, the more useful the information will be to us. And I think about nearly 90% of you attending have kindly filled this out. So I'll run it for another 10 seconds or so, and then I will just share the results, and we'll get a profile of who's with us today. So I will do that now. And as you can see, about 12% of you are OMC directors, 8% licensed property management agents, large attendance from our city and county council colleagues. And tomorrow is your council day, highlighting the great work our local authorities do for all of us. So thank you for attending. About 6% from local authority staff, nearly 20% from the waste management sector, and you can see the other audience members there as well. So thanks again for filling that out. If you're attending today's session and you heard about it or learned about it other than through our Mud Matters newsletter, can I encourage you to subscribe to our Mud Matters newsletter? We're on the second edition now. You can see the content in the most recent issue of the newsletter. There's the website. There's the detail about how to subscribe. So we would urge you to do that. It's periodic. We get in touch through the newsletter when we have news, when we have something to share. So we commit not to spamming you or overloading you with information. We hope to be timely and relevant. For those of you who don't know about the Housing Agency, this is us. This is our office on Mount Street, and you can read all about what we do in our work to provide the homes that people need in the country on our website and in our strategic plan. A reminder, maybe for those of you new to the multi-unit developments MUD sector, this is the dramatis personae, the diagram that tries to illustrate everyone involved in the sector, the OMC in the middle, the property management agent, doing the day-to-day work with the building, the owners of the OMC, owner-occupiers, landlords who elect the directors to run the scheme. So again, many of you will have seen this before, but just a little reminder about what a multi-unit development is. What else will you hear about in our MUD Matters newsletter? You'll hear about our regional outreach events, of which we will have held 39 by the end of this year. And I don't mean we've held 39 this year. I mean, over the course of the last number of years, we've held 39 sessions in the places in red around the country. Those in green are the ones to come. So we will be in Blanchardstown, we will be in Dublin City Centre, we will be in Cork, Dundalk, Athlone and Ennis on those Wednesdays over September and October. So watch MUD Matters for updates on those. Other things we've recently included in MUD Matters, updates on grants for multi-unit developments undertaking retrofitting activities. And we'd remind you about our webinar and our training materials on our YouTube channel around all of that. We are trying to create a register of OMCs, a database of OMCs in the country. If you're filing a B1 for an OMC, please tick the box to identify it. And there's lots of guidance on our website about that. You'll also have read about the public consultation on the design standards for apartments. That's open until the 7th of July. And an update on, we'll call it MUD reform and the movement of the Multi-Unit Development Act from the Department of Justice to the Department of Housing. That is at an advanced stage in the Oireachtas now. Yesterday, the 24th of June, it was at committee stage in the Seanad. So it's well advanced and you can read about that on the Oireachtas website. When that transfer of the Act happens, there's to be a review of the legislation. So keep an eye out for that as well. So to today, many of you will remember that we held a webinar back in 2024 on waste management and recycling with colleagues from the Waste Enforcement Regional Lead Authorities and from the Irish Waste Management Association. Nearly 320 people attended that live and 400 people or so have watched it back on the YouTube channel, which indicates a huge appetite for more information. And that's why we have collaborated today with the Environmental Protection Agency. And we would remind you that the Waste Enforcement Regional Lead authorities, the WERLAs, have been in communication with OMCs and multi-unit developments through letters and correspondence you see on the left, and their contact details are on the right. And we can see that some local authorities have actually advanced to a more in-depth and a more active role in monitoring apartments and multi-unit developments in their segregation and waste management practices. And for example, we see on Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council's website requirements in relation to the legislation and in relation to information gathering and evidence gathering for OMCs and property management agents in the practices in their development. So a lot happening in this space. Today, we're delighted to hear from, first of all, Niamh McCormack, Environmental Protection Agency, member of their research strategy team. And Niamh has worked in the waste and statistics environment and area. And she was a manager of the Municipal Waste Characterisation Project. And Niamh has extensive international experience in Australia and New Zealand, and her academic credentials are from UL and Queen's in Belfast. And once we've heard from Niamh, we will hear from Percy Foster, the author of the EPA-funded report on optimising food waste collection in apartments. And Percy is the director of Foster Environmental and involved in the sector for over 20 years, with a lot of work with stakeholders on recycling and best practices in the circular economy. So that's enough from me. We're here to hear from the experts. I will stop sharing. I will invite Niamh to turn on her camera and her mic and hand over to Niamh. The floor is yours. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, David. As David mentioned, I'm Niamh McCormack. I'm from the EPA Research Strategy Team, where I lead the Green and Circular Economy Hub. And I'm just going to first off give you I'm just going to give a background into why the EPA funded this project. So the EPA is an independent public body, and our purpose is to protect, improve, and restore the environment. For those of you who don't know, our responsibilities include environmental licensing and enforcement, climate science and climate change, environmental monitoring and assessment, guidance and awareness raising, and environmental research and development. You may not have been aware that the EPA is a major funder of scientific research, and since 2021, we have funded over 330 independent research projects. EPA research, we aim to deliver scientific support for environmental policy development, implementation, and broader decision making. And we funded Foster Environmental to complete the OptiFood project, which examined the challenge of low levels of food waste segregation in Irish apartments.
Neve, I might just briefly interrupt you. If you'd
Yeah,
like to switch on your camera, that'd be great.
sure, no problem. See, apologies, I thought it was on. Now,
Great stuff.
can you
Thank
hear
you.
me? Great. Okay. Apologies, everyone. So the need for this research project really came about from the household waste characterization. And the household waste characterization really looks at what is in our bins, and the EPA carries this out every 4 years. And so the most recently published one was published back in 2023. And the findings of this showed that in the household general waste bins, you might think of that, some people refer to it as the black bin, that only 36% of the materials in that bin were actually in the correct bin. The rest should have either been put into the recycling bin, the organic waste bin, or brought to a bring centre. And when you looked at the composition of the household waste bin, 21% of that waste was actually food and garden waste. And then when you looked at apartments in particular, it was basically twice the amount of food waste was in apartment general waste bins. So it was 41% of waste in apartment general waste bins was food waste. So it just really highlighted the need for research to be undertaken into how to improve segregation in apartment general waste bins. So you might now be wondering, like, why does it matter where the food waste is put and if we put it in the right bin? But food waste is a global problem that has environmental, social, and economic consequences. Over 10% of global carbon emissions are caused by food waste. And prevention is the best way to reduce food waste, but like we'll always have unavoidable food waste. So you're always going to have bones, say vegetable peelings, corn on the cob, stuff that has to be put into a food waste bin. And so this should be segregated and separately collected to enable efficient treatment by anaerobic digestion or composting. And so that means that the food waste can be converted into valuable resources such as biogas, digestate, and compost. So you can see there really is more to food waste than wasted food. There's the land, water, and energy that goes into growing, producing, and transporting food. And I did want to, I've mentioned that food waste prevention is the key to reducing food waste. And so I did want to take this opportunity just to highlight the work of the EPA Circular Economy Programme, which aims to raise awareness of food waste and target behavioural change to reduce food waste. So we have two initiatives. The first one is the Stop Food Waste campaign, and that's a national campaign to reduce household food waste. And it provides everyday actions to help you reduce your food waste and save money. And then we also lead the Food Waste Charter, and this is a national voluntary agreement supporting Irish businesses to measure, reduce, and report food waste. And you can find out more information on both of those initiatives on the EPA website. Okay, now I'm going to hand over to Percy to present the findings of the OptiFood research project. Thank you.
Thanks, Neve, for the introduction. Hopefully you can see my slides okay.
All good. Thank you.
Great. David, no, thanks very much for the opportunity to speak here today on the research project. As Neve mentioned, it was led by Foster Environmental, but we had two project partners on it, which was Michele Giovanni from ARS Ambient in Italy and Enzo Favino in Scolaria Agraria at the Parco de Mons in Italy also, where they have a they're kind of ahead of us in relation to the segregation of food waste from apartments. So they were our partners on the project, and very much like to acknowledge the funding from the EPA as well. So a little bit of background, I suppose, to the project, and Neve has touched on it, is Ireland as a whole has EU recycling targets to reach. We're kind of around 42%, and for 2025, we had to be at 55% recycling rate. Now, the statistics aren't out yet for that, but the projections were that, we weren't going to meet that target. So a little bit of background in relation to the amount of food waste from apartments in 2023. Just over 3,000 tons of food waste was collected from apartments and recycled into compost or digestate. And that was in comparison of there was over 50,000 tons of residual or mixed waste collected from apartments. So we know of that residual waste, there's a good proportion, as Niamh mentioned, is food waste. So we know there's opportunities to segregate and recycle more food waste from apartments. So really, I suppose the project was about looking at how can we segregate more food waste and create a valuable feedstock, and also help us meet our EU recycling target obligations. Contamination was another issue nationally around household brown bins or food waste bins. Is around 9% contamination of plastics and metals. And when we put the project together, there wasn't really too much data about around the contamination levels in apartments. And I suppose for everybody in the audience, I suppose just to give a bit of context is currently everybody is provided with a service to collect and segregate household food waste. And with the apartments that we did the various trials on, it was a situation where the tenants pay a flat fee for general waste management, cleaning, security. So they're not paying directly for their waste management. So we know there wasn't going to be a motivation that money in trying to change their behavior as well. And that's where a lot of our work was trying to change behavior, where money wasn't really part of the main driver. So the main objectives really of the project was to look at nudging techniques, trying to encourage people to recycle more food waste in their apartments. So really what we did, we've done a series of 4 phases of trials in over 14 apartments, where we're trying to encourage them to change their behavior, try and recycle more food waste, and also reduce the level of contamination in it as well. Contamination can be an issue for the processing in the composting site. It's difficult and expensive to remove, and also you want to reduce the risk of any potential contamination in the final compost or digestate product. Also, I suppose with the project, the objective was that we would kind of recommend the ideal collection model, also provide educational tools, which we engage with various stakeholders when we drafted with them as well. So, research overview. So, we conducted, as I mentioned, 4 phases of research, where in each phase we did a series of different trials in different apartments. Each trial typically would last about 6 weeks or longer in some cases, and at the minimum we did that with 30 apartments. Before each trial at each apartment block, we would have looked at some baseline data. So maybe the week or 2 before we came on site, we discreetly went and weighed the actual food waste bins to get some baseline data. All trials that we did were done with existing apartments that had a food waste collection service already. So during the trial, every week we would have went and measured the food waste bins. It just kept us closely connected of what's happening, and to see if there was anything that we needed to tweak or change in the trials. And before and after each trial, we did waste characterization to see what the level of plastic and metals and various contaminants are in the food waste. And then after the trial as well, we did a waste characterization as well. So our research really, I would say, was very much exploratory. We're trying to kind of test out nudging techniques of how we can discreetly encourage people to change their behavior to recycle more food waste with low levels of contamination. And I suppose each phase would feed into the next design phase as well. So with all the research that we did, we provided what we referred to as some basic tools, and we referred to this as the basic package that apartments would have got. So the basic package, which you'll hear me talking about, consisted where about a week before we came on site, every apartment tenant would have got a letter from us saying who we are. We're doing a research trial. We're going to come along next week at a certain day. We're going to deliver a 10-litre vented kitchen caddy, and an instruction leaflet that we basically adapted from mywaste.ie, and a supply of compostable bags. And also at the same time, we put up the My Waste sign in the waste shed, which explains what materials goes into your food waste bin. And we ensured that there were new food waste bins with stickers on them, or if they're old ones, that everything was power washed and cleaned, so that when people go into their waste shed, everything looked clean and tidy as well. So that's kind of the basic package. And from this basic package, we would have tried different nudging techniques. So with these various trials and interventions, I'm just going to list what they were and kind of very concisely explain what they were. So I suppose one trial we did where we didn't give a basic package, in a sense, we only gave the instruction leaflet in the post. So that was put into their letter boxes. Everybody just got the basic package, which was basically dropped outside the door to one side. And then we did what we call reach or door to door. So basically, with our basic package, we went into the apartment block, we knocked on everybody's door, and then we had a brief 60-second conversation saying who we are. We're giving you a free recycling kit. You use it in your kitchen, you put your food waste into it, and you put the compostable bags to line it, and then you bring it down to your food waste bin in the waste shed. It was a very brief engagement, didn't take too long. Typically, we would aim to maybe go around twice, and we'd get about 70-75% of all tenants would have physically engaged with us in a conversation, getting the basic package. Concept tutoring, that's basically where we set up a gazebo next to the waste shed, where we were there for certain periods of an hour, 2 hours, and certain days. And we basically had a little display, and we just explained to people who wanted to engage with us how to recycle your food waste. And we obviously did that before the start of a trial. So we kind of just engaged with people. In some cases, I think people were running away from us because they talked like we were a bit like Big Brother. We were watching what they were doing. So the next one we call is motivational messaging. And this is where we had, I suppose, subtle messages to people where we would have posted A5 flyers into their letterboxes, and they would have got like, others are doing better than you can do better, or there's apartment blocks in Dublin recycling 50% more food waste than you can do better. Those type of messages to people. We also tried a rewards based where an apartment block at the start of a trial, we said that if you get to recycle over 80% of your food waste, we'd give a voucher of €200 to your local school or sports club as well. So that's where as a whole, if the apartment block would recycle that amount of food waste. Also, what we did where people were a little bit hesitant of us doing it, was putting the food waste bin near the entrance of the apartment block. So taking your 120-litre food waste bin out from the waste shed and putting it about 2 or 3 meters away from the entrance of the apartment block where that was feasible. And also, when it came to reduce residual waste bins, we, I suppose, discreetly reduced the number of 1,100-litre residual bins in the waste shed. So we would have taken away a large 1,100-litre residual landfilling type bin out of the waste shed to see what effect that would have. So the key findings, what are the key findings? So what we've done here is we've kind of presented the findings from each phase. So it's a chart where you can see various lines over the weeks, and you can see the amount of food waste increasing or decreasing over typically a 6-week period. So from phase one, the first set of trials that we did with apartments, you can see this graph kind of graphs the relative change from the baseline of food waste prior to us doing an intervention and doing trials. Each line is a trial. So if you look at that graph, you can see the gray line at the bottom, and that's where the apartment block just got the instruction leaflet in their post box. You can see that the orange line there is the rewards over the 6 weeks. And then I suppose the interesting one in this trial, which kind of took us by a bit of surprise, if you look at that dark blue line, you can see after 2 weeks, which was typically within a 2-week period, behavior changes in all the trials. You can see it just shot up straight up to a very a big change in people's behavior recycling food waste. And if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, if you can screen, you can see this is the mess that it kind of created. People got very enthusiastic. We hadn't provided enough food waste bins and waste sheds. I could see that people just kept stockpiling the food waste in bags above the bins. This waste shed was outside, and the birds squeezed through the mesh, and they picked at the bags to get food waste. So when I went there, this was not a very inviting waste shed to walk into. So we learned the lesson there of how many bins to provide per apartments. And I suppose straight away we cleaned that all up. We put in more brown bins, we made it clean and tidy. But unfortunately, we had turned people off from recycling. You can see it just dropped down straight away. We went back out again, doing kind of our constant tutoring event, but that just couldn't change people's behavior again. So that was a good learning lesson. You can see as well from that trial that really it was the reaching everybody, going door to door, knocking on, explaining the basic package of the kitchen caddy, and also the kind of the motivational messaging there as well. That kind of really kind of stood out from us as well from this first phase of trial. So from that first phase of trial, we repeated 1 or 2 trials, but also we added an additional few trials as well in the phase 2. So the next slide is your phase 2 results. So from our phase 2 results, and you can see that purple line went straight up. I just want to flag to you, this is where we put the food waste bin about 3 meters away from the entrance of the apartment block, but it came from a very low level baseline of just 0.2 kilogram of apartment per week. So any change was always going to be dramatic. So you can see with the other lines there as well that the reduced residual, the basic package and social housing. So you really kind of, from this trial, stood out about the bin being more convenient to people. So a lot of people were skeptical about this, a lot of the people from the waste industry, and it actually did work. It just made the service more convenient to people. It wasn't contaminated because the bin is quite visible. People can see you dropping stuff into a bin. I think maybe over that 6-week period, maybe you might have had one small bag of contamination, but that worked quite well. People thought that it might create odors and smells. It didn't. You can see behind there, there's a window. That was a window off an apartment that was open several times. They never complained about odors. So we were asked by our steering committee and our focus group to see what happens over the summer months. So we left the bin there over the summer months. There was no complaints of odors and there was no pest issues as well. So it was an interesting find in the trial. I suppose when we did these trials, we always gave people a starter kit or a certain supply of bags that would, in our estimate, would cover a 6-week period. And I suppose we wanted to see, well, what would happen if they got a continuous supply of compostable bags, or would recycling rates drop off? So the next slide is just of one trial where we let kind of continue on. So, and I suppose this is really going back to that same trial where we had the food waste bin at the entrance. So you can see when we kind of finished the trial officially after about day 42 or so, you can see that the people kept at that change of behavior. It went up and down each week, but it was, in relative terms, it was kind of consistent. And then you can see it dropping off. And it was dropping off because their supply of compostable bags had basically run out. So we did an intervention. We just delivered another supply of compostable bags. We put it in their letterboxes, and you can see again that the level of food waste start to increase again as well. So I suppose people are just kind of wondering, what about this motivational messaging? What's that all about? And the next slide is just going to give you some examples that we would have used in some of the trials. So basically, you can see they're just simple messaging. The one left-hand side is just saying, look, it's simple to recycle your food waste, 1, 2, 3. This is how you use the caddy, the bags, and you put it into your food waste bin in your waste shed. The next one is about, you can produce compost from it. And the last one is where we kind of use some live data from that trial where we calculated about 3 weeks into the trial or 4 weeks, the kilograms of food waste that were being collected. And then we're able to say, well, compared to other apartments that are collecting 3 kilograms, like you can do better. We also kind of noticed when we're handing out these A5 leaflets, we increased their frequency to weekly, but also we changed the color scheme so people would notice that it's a new flyer. So the background colors were changed every week as well. So now we're kind of coming to the end of the research where we did phase 3, but also what we decided to do with the final validation trial that we did with about 100 apartments down in Limerick. We put that result on this graph as well. So and this kind of gives you a good kind of insight of what we learned from each phase. We kept adapting, refining various techniques, and then we came to the validation phase. We combined a few of those together. So this is phase 3 and the final validation results. And if you look at the 3 lines at the bottom, you can see that the yellow line is where we reached everybody and did some motivational messaging combined. You can see we did one just with motivational messaging, and then you can see where we just had the food waste bin near the entrance as well. The thick red line is the final validation trial where we combined these together. So we had the food waste bin was near the entrance of the apartment. We would have went door to door, reach technique of delivering the kitchen caddies and basic package. We would reach around 70-75% of tenants. And then we would have done the weekly kind of motivational messaging as well. So you can see from the final validation results that we increased the level of food waste recycling. It was consistent over the 2 weeks after the initial kind of 2-week behavioral change. And it was increased about 143% from the original baseline data prior to the trial. So we were quite happy with that result, and we were happy that the final validation results show a combination of various techniques, yielded a better result that was also consistent after day 14 to the end of the trial. And it was with a large number of apartments. It was over 100 apartments as well. So it kind of gave us a good sounding, a good feeling that our trial was on good solid ground. So the next slide is where we're going to just show you the data in different terms. In a sense, we're going to combine all the phase results together in one graph. And then also we're going to convert that data then to kilograms to be able to compare ourselves to Italy and how we compare to Italy, which is well known for good activities in recycling food waste. So I know it's a bit hard to see, but if you look on your left-hand side, this is where we combined all the baseline data. That purple line, as I mentioned, was the phase 2 trial where we came from a very low baseline of the food waste bin outside the apartment. But that thick red line that's our final validation trial. So, it's nice to see that all the other trials, interventions we did, that the final validation trial was near the top of all those findings as well. The next chart, I suppose, it's if you look at the dashed line, the purple line, that's where typically in Italy they would be collecting over 3.5 kilograms of apartment per week. We kind of converted our data to kilogram per apartment per week, so in order for it to compare. You can see with the thick red line, our final validation trial, you can see that we were collecting around 2 kilograms per apartment per week. It does vary in some of the trials, but I suppose, you have to bear in mind Ireland and Italy, it's a different culture. There's different, maybe more wastage of food waste in Italy. It's a different culture. So you can't compare directly, but I suppose it gives us a good idea that we've come from a good baseline and that we're getting some consistent results that are getting close to Italy as well. And I suppose as well, it shows that we're able to change behavior and it is consistent when people kind of change their behavior as well. So that was some good findings. I suppose going back to the original question and objective at the start is the level of contamination. What's it like in the apartments? What's it like before and after trials? The next slide is just going to show the contamination levels before and after. So you can see here in some of the phases, we did waste categorization before and after. And you can see an average was 6% contamination in our validation trial at the end, and that reduced to 1.4%. But you can see in the other trials as well that we reduced the level of contamination. And you can see here, particularly, we focused on plastic bags in that little pie chart. So you can see just with plastic bags alone, we reduced them significantly after the trial as well, because plastic bags are a big source of contamination. I suppose the big question that a lot of people in the waste industry always would have asked is, how sustainable is any of this work? What's a long-lasting effect of it? So with some of the trials that we did at the start that were 6 weeks long, we let them continue naturally themselves, and we would have went there every so often and taken the weights to bin to see, well, what's happening. So people didn't realize that we were doing that. So the next slide kind of looks at the sustained impact of the trials over a longer period. So this period was the guts of 1 year and would have been from our original phase 1 trial. You can see each line is a different trial. You can see the green dot is maybe where we gave some additional compostable bags to see what happened. But I would just focus your eyes on the purple line and that orange dot. So on that graph, you can see over that, wherever it is, 8-month period or so, you can see in that particular apartment block the level of food waste collected. And at the orange dot, this is when we moved the food waste bin from the waste shed next to the entrance in the apartment. And we also gave a additional supply of compostable bags. So you can see straight away the level of food waste recycling increased just by making it a little bit more convenient for people where they were to put their food waste bin. Also, with this trial, we had purposely designed it a little bit different, where the first trial where we did the food waste bin at the entrance, it was about 3 or 4 meters away from the building. So if there was any type of odor, it would dissipate into the air and not go into the apartment. This trial, we purposely put the food waste bin right next to the building, and there was a window in the lobby that got opened, and there was a little bit of complaint of odor because the odor was able to waft into the apartments, and you can see when the line dropped, that's when we put the food waste bin back into the waste shed. So you can see the location of the bin is very important. One, in that making it near the entrance of the apartment block, but have it 3 or 4 meters out from the building. That's what we've learned works well, and there's no complaints from anybody. While we're doing this work, we also did some additional work around the design of a waste shed. I suppose during these trials, we visited a lot of waste sheds. We would observe good waste sheds, bad waste shed designs, and we kind of learned some common threads that would make the waste shed very user-friendly and inviting for people to use. So we kind of draft up kind of a model of a waste shed, and it's in our report. It has all the formulas to work out the number of bins, but I just want to share this kind of overarching bird's eye view of a waste shed that we would have designed. So I suppose in the trials, we would have worked out that 120-litre food waste bin, one is needed for every 20 apartments in the block. And we also would have learned that there needs to be, a washing facility, people to wash their hands. There's a tap there. It needs to be bright, needs a bit of ventilation. So details of that are in the appendix of the report. And as I said, this was kind of a desktop academic view, and we really recommend that this would be trialed out or built in a future apartment block, and see what people think of that. So we pulled together our knowledge and put that into the report. So that's in the appendix of the report as well. So coming to an end of my presentation, I just want to kind of wrap up of what kind of the main conclusions are and what we've kind of recommended. So from the findings of the various trials, we kind of recommended a standard service for the collection of food waste from apartments. We've learned that there should be a 140-litre bin. It has to be brown in colour, one for every 20 apartments. And in all the trials we were involved with, it was typically the food waste was already being collected weekly in the trials. We also would recommend, at least power washing the food waste bins because, residue of food waste does get caught on the lid as the bin has been emptied into the waste collection truck. So, at a minimum, at least power washing around the lid of the bin and around that, but at least, if the actual entire bin could be power washed at least 3 times a year, that would just make it more user friendly. The supply of compostable bags, as you can see from the trials, is important. It does affect people's behavior and the amount of food waste that they recycle. And I suppose what we were recommending is that a basic package is provided to each apartment unit, and that includes your 10-litre vented kitchen caddy, a supply of compostable bin liners, the mywaste.e instruction leaflet of how to recycle food waste. And then also that pack is delivered door to door, where you reach at least 75% of the tenants. And also where it is feasible, that your 120-litre food waste bin is located near the entrance of the apartment block. We know that's not all feasible in all apartments, but where it is feasible, it does help the amount of food waste that's recycled. And also with that, you have a campaign of motivational messages for at least 5 weeks, where it encourages people as well. So that's kind of the key kind of service standard. And I suppose on a national level, what's the impact of this research if it was implemented? And I suppose this next slide is just going to explain that. So as I mentioned at the start, in 2023, there was just over 3,000 tons of food waste that was collected separately and recycled into compost or digestate. And if our recommended service standards implemented, and based on the projections of the government of the number of new apartment blocks that are going to be built, by 2030, that 3,000 tons could increase to over 40,000 tons of food waste collected from apartments nationally, at a contamination level of just over 1%. And on a national level, this would contribute 1.26% towards our municipal recycling target. So I suppose with a little bit of intervention that is cost effective and not too difficult to implement, we can make a significant change in the amount of food waste collected and help meet our EU obligations as well. So while I am presenting here today, there's a team of people behind me, and I really want to acknowledge them in the project. And without them, the project wouldn't have been a success. Particularly, I want to mention my colleague Celia Crenham and also Freya Bartels. So the three of us were kind of on the ground, doing the work, learning from it, and it was great to have them on board. Also, our team was complemented with Enzo and Michaela as well. So they've been involved in food waste recycling in Italy, where they advised a lot of municipalities and involved in a lot of research, and they themselves found the techniques that we were trying very interesting and very innovative that hadn't been tried before as well. So this was the core team. As well as the core team, we had great interaction from a wider team, and I very much want to acknowledge them as well. So we had DPA established a steering committee. So we had Pauline on it, Isabel, Serpa, Odile, and Jean. So they were on our steering committee. And also from an EPA perspective, Neve and Dorothy Stewart as well helped project manage it with us as well. In addition to that, we had a great support from the waste industry and the OMCs and property management agents in the trials. Particularly, I suppose, the core group of our trials were based in Galway, and then the validation then was based in Limerick with Mr. Binman. So we had Barna and City Bin in Galway helping us facilitate us in getting the carbon blocks and helping us out with the trials. And we also had the owner management companies and property agents as well helping out, and very much without their support and their enthusiasm to help us, we wouldn't have been so successful. As well as that, we kind of formed a focus group who would have met about 3 or 4 times during the project. So they were kind of a wider group, which included Pauline, but also David from the housing agency, people from the waste management industry, from the recycling companies, from the regional authorities, from the property management agents as well, and the Department of Environment as well. So we had a kind of a wider focus group as well, who would have fed into the design of some of the trials as well and provided us with some feedback as well. And I suppose a final thanks is to, our co-funders of the work, which is DPA research team. And I suppose I very much want to acknowledge the contribution from Enzo and Michaela as well, from Schoolaria and ARS as well. And as Neve has mentioned, there is a report. It's detailed, but not too long to read. And that's on the epa.e website as well. So thanks for your attention, and I hope you've learned something interesting today.
Thank you very much indeed, Percy. Fantastic presentation and insights on the detail of your work, which was over such a lengthy period and so involved and so rigorous in coming to your findings and the recommendations that can make this a better process for everyone living in apartments. I have here my trusty waste caddy and my leaflet and my collection bags as well. So not just talking about it, doing it too. So I'd encourage you all to take up those initiatives as well. I'm going to run a quick poll, a kind of a snapshot poll after hearing from Percy and from Niamh. And I'm going to see if I can get the poll up here. And we're going to very quickly ask you, for those of you who are apartment dwellers, having learned about Percy's research, how do you view the food waste collection service in your development? Are you satisfied with it, or do you think it needs to change? So if you could, this is anonymous as well. Your replies will not be connected to your email address. So it encourages many of you who are apartment dwellers to answer the question. question. So I'll run that briefly for about another 10 seconds, and I'll share the result, and it will be of interest to everyone on the session. So thank you very much to the 45 or so of you who have responded, and 70% of you are of the view that the food waste collection service in your development needs to change. So that tells its own tale. We will move now to our Q&A, and the first question that came in by email is a very lengthy question, and really, I suppose, Percy, you had thoughts and observations on that particular question. The challenges for this individual in their development. It's a kind of a multi-pronged question, and people can read it in detail later on. But Percy, do you want to comment on that question that came in, please?
Yeah, so I suppose they're talking about a very specific case in relation to the economics of your food waste bin, and I suppose they're asking, where can they go to get some recourse around this? They know that there's obligations of companies around this. So I suppose my simple advice to them is that in Ireland we've three regional waste authorities called WERLAs. And if you go to the WERLA, WERLA.ie, you will find which word is applicable to your region and contact them directly. They are the enforcement agency around the household collection service in Ireland. So if you have any issues around your service with your collector, its obligations, that's your first port of call to reach out to the WERLAs and discuss it with them.
Great stuff. And we see the activity now being undertaken by individual local authorities, which feed up into the WERLAs, and the example from Dunleary earlier on. This is perhaps an unfair question, Percy, but we'll try and put it to you anyway. What's the single most effective thing OMC directors can do to improve waste segregation?
So look, I can give a long answer, but also give a very short answer.
Read the report, says you.
I suppose from our work, we know that the waste management companies are willing to provide people with a basic package. And I suppose if you can facilitate the waste collectors to provide that basic package of a kitchen caddy, instruction leaflet to your tenants, I suppose that would be a great way to move things forward. I'd also kind of say when it comes to the waste sheds, some were clean and inviting to walk into it, had lights, some were dirty, and you just would just throw your waste in from the door entrance. So if you can make your waste shed inviting for people to walk into, that's clean and tidy, they're not stepping on anything, and just making sure also that there's enough bins for your food waste as well.
And I think the next question, Eve, if you want to turn on your camera and your mic, the next question we have is, how does the Irish recycling position in the residential sector compare with other EU countries? So we saw Percy's specific examples with Italy, but if you want to comment more widely, Niamh, please.
Sure. Yeah, look, it's a good question. So as Percy said at the start of his presentation, the latest data on the Eurostat website shows that Ireland's municipal recycling rate in 2023, so that's the latest data, is 42%. So that's below the EU average, which is 48%. And if you're looking at it from a ranking perspective, we're 17th of the 27 member states. I suppose just to point out that the question is regarding residential sectors, I suppose household. And when we talk about municipal waste, we're talking about household and commercial waste. So it's like waste is similar to household waste. The 2024 statistics aren't published yet, but they should be published shortly on the EPA website. But the EPA Waste Statistics team has done forecasting, and you can see it on our website. And that does show for 2024, it looks like the municipal recycling rate is going to be similar, and that we are at risk of missing that 2025 EU target of 55% recycling.
So we have some way to go, and hopefully the implementation of recommendations from the research will bring us on, as Percy has illustrated. The last question then, will Ireland face fines for failure to meet recycling targets? Maybe Percy, if you want to comment on that one.
Yeah, the simple answer is yes. We have EU obligations of targets to meet, and if we don't meet those targets, there will be infringement from the European Commission. As to what level that is, I don't know. I don't think anybody would know what that would be, but it is a key driver that we need to recycle and do more. And we know from the food waste side of it, it's wet, it's heavy. It's going to give us that tonnage data. It's going to give us that jump in order to meet those recycling targets. So yeah, it's as Neve says, the forecast out there is we're unlikely to meet the 2025 targets, but we do have another target, in 2030. So I think that's where we all need to be working together in the apartment block sector and have our eyes on the longer game in 2030.
Very good. Thank you, Percy. We'll wrap it up there, a little bit over time. Thank you very much to everyone for attending. Thanks to Percy and to Niamh for all the work they've put into, obviously, the research put in delivering today's webinar. Can I thank also my colleague Lisa Marie Sheehy for her work in pulling this together, and my communications colleagues as well, who did so much work to publicise the session. If you want to hear more about the multi-unit development sector and the mud sector, please register and subscribe for our Mud Matters newsletter on our website. There it is. And if you want to contact us, mud@housingagency.ie. Goramila Mahagav Galer, we hope you enjoyed the session, and we will speak to you soon. Hopefully you will enjoy the afternoon sunshine. Slán live.
Thanks again.